I'm Dean. I'm the dad.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Arthur. I'm the son.
And together we are Family Plot. Very nice. Very nice. Let's get the housekeeping out of the way as usual. First and foremost, if you want to help us out, a couple of ways you can do that. There's our Patreon with $1 and $3 donations. Right now, we're running a bit of a contest. If you get a $3 subscription to our Patreon, you are helping Laura and Lexi. And if they win the contest, which right now there's only one, and it's for them, so yay! So they are winning. But if you win, then you get a special gift from Laura and Lexi.
Yeah.
If you are a $1 donator, and Arthur and I would like to win, but if you're a $1 donator, you get and we win, you get a gift from the brilliant mind of our young Arthur here. And by the way, if you enjoyed that little snippet of evil laugh he did because it's spooky season, I want you to think about this. Right now, you can go to Octoberpod. Edward October has the greatest little horror podcast. He gets actual authors to write these radio kind of dramas, and then he gets other podcasters to act them. And our own Arthur played Satan in his most recent episode dropping on the 15th, all about the evils of Frankenstein. And like I said, our Arthur plays Satan and does what I think is an amazing job.
It's very creepy.
It's uber creepy. So, yeah, check that out. Now, with Patreon out of the way, if you can't afford to do a monthly donation, you can do a one-time donation through Buy Me a Coffee of $1 or $2. Again, we appreciate anyone who helps us out. If you can't afford to donate to us,
and boy, do we understand who that is.
If you enjoy the show, you can help us by sharing it on social media.
Share it with family.
With everyone. And if you don't enjoy the show, please keep it to yourself.
If you don't have anything nice to say,
don't say anything at all.
Okay. Boy, I'm going to have to get my raspberry better.
Maybe you can have Blue make us one.
Maybe. What's going on in the plot tonight?
Death part.
It's just true enough. True enough.
Well, tonight we travel via the magic of podcasting to a small Bavarian farmstead about 40 miles north of Munich, Germany.
For Danish?
No, I wish we. This is spooky season. We don't get Danishes.
No spooky.
This morning.
But we traveled to a small farmstead about 40 miles north of Munich, Germany, where a person or persons unknown made their way into the home, lived there with the family, probably in secret, before murdering them and remaining in the home for another 3 days in this sinister, spooky season. Are you really sure you want to live in the country episode of the Family Plot podcast?
Wow.
Now, bit of a trigger warning. This happens in the like early 1900s-ish, thereabouts, and end of the 1800s. For some reason, Germany was not a great place around this time. Lots of incest happened there. We will discuss that and sexual assault briefly. If these are too much for you, please skip the episode. You matter, as our friend Kate used to say. So that's my trigger warning. We have to bring these up because they are part of the story, but we're not going to dwell on them, just like we don't dwell on unpleasant details. That's not our
As
podcast.
always, we don't include details on those types of crime as they do not add interest to the story. They are just part of what actually took place.
Right. So, wanted to get that out of the way. And with that, let me tell you a little about Hinterkaifeck. It's a farmstead located roughly 40 miles from the city of Munich, Germany. It was built in 1863 by the Grubers and had been their home since that time. Hinterkaifeck was a large farmstead located in the German state of Bavaria, the same place the Third Reich would later originate from. It was near the small village of Kaifeck. Hinterkaifeck means behind Kaifeck. It was a small farmstead that grew a few crops and raised a few animals. The family enjoyed their isolation, staying away from neighbors, and it was not unusual for them to ignore knocks on the front door, and those who knew them knew to stay away. The family consisted of Andreas Gruber, who was 68, and his wife Kazilia, 73, their grown daughter Victoria Gabriel, who was 35, and her two little children, little Kazilia, who was 7, and Joseph, who was 2. The family had also hired a maid recently named Maria Baumgartner, who was 44. The father, Andreas Gruber, was known to be surly and ill-tempered.
Do you think he was related to Hans?
Wait, from Frozen?
No, from Die Hard.
Probably not. Probably not. Let's see. We know the father, Andreas Gruber, was known to be surly and ill-tempered. The farmstead consisted of a barn and the family home and some crops. The family was known to be active in church, and little Kazilia attended school in a nearby village. So while they did keep mostly to themselves, they had a routine, and the family the village was used to seeing the family on a weekly basis.
Excellent. So now we have a little background. Why don't we take a few minutes and check into Arthur's Corner?
Yeah, Arthur, it's your corner time. It's Arthur's Corner time. It's Arthur's Corner time.
Don't we have a song or something for it?
There's
Yeah.
a sting.
There's a sting.
But
We got it.
Here it's Arthur's Corner, or something like that.
Yeah.
Hear ye! Allow me to present Arthur's Corner.
How are we doing today?
I missed you too.
Hanging in.
Other than that, hanging in.
Been a busy day.
It has been quite a busy day. I'm doing alright though.
Good.
I am doing quite alright. We had a lot today. We had a signs of suicide thing, and my second hour, technically. Not like necessarily my second hour, but it was the second hour of the day.
I get you.
Why?
I said I get you. I was saying I understand what you're saying. It was the second hour of the day, but you weren't necessarily in second hour at that point.
Right. Thank you. You understand me. Lovely. Let's see. Any other updates? Oh, excuse me. I got a new dino mask. Mom let me get a new dino mask.
Yep. And you dyed your hair kind of pink, which I like. pink and blonde. I think it should have another color in there, though.
I'm thinking like black, because I really want to do raccoon tails on like these longer pieces of hair.
Black would work.
I think it'd be really cute. But I don't know. I'm still waiting. I really like having glow-ups and stuff, so I'm like... I'm waiting till I need... Oh yeah, my school is being very silly.
How is your school being silly this time?
It just is. It always is.
I was going to say, your school seems pretty silly to me a lot of the time, but, you know. Since I occasionally teach a class there, I don't get to. Well, matter of fact, I think October 30th, I have a class scheduled to teach, but I'll have to go and look.
I am not sure.
But yeah, I teach a class of on all things intro to podcasting. So
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me.
yeah. In fact, I have had the rest of the cast with me there a couple of times.
Yeah, we've gone.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about the intro to podcasting class a couple of times.
Yes.
Possibly.
Oh, I'm sure we have. It was on my mind because Arthur asked me a question.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I don't really have much today. Unfortunately, I had to go to the emergency room, and it's been a long day.
And it's fine that you don't have much. I'm just always glad to stop and check in with you. So let's clap her out. And Arthur, why don't you tell us about Andreas Gruber?
All right. Andreas Gruber was not a nice person. He was foul-tempered, prone to yelling, and when really riled up, often grabbed nearby objects to attack the offending individual. Still, he was only ever arrested once, and that for a crime of sexually assaulting his daughter, Victoria, and both served a year in jail for incest. Which is rude AF to make Victoria serve time for a crime that she almost certainly had been coerced into.
Or forced into, one of the two.
Coerced, yeah, or forced. This was in 1914, shortly after Victoria's husband had been killed in World War I. He was said to be deeply religious by his fellow churchgoers. His wife, Cecilia?
I thought it was Cazelia, but it could be
Cazelia?
Cecilia, yeah. I never considered that.
I don't know. Which was even more committed to her faith, as well as being committing to her husband. After he and Victoria were imprisoned, she never left him. Little Cecilia was smart and well liked at the local school. We know almost nothing about Joseph, as he was so young at that point. Many think Joseph was actually fathered by Andreas. More on that later. And you know what? I think this is a perfect point to stop and take a word from another podcast. How do we feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
Sounds excellent to me. I believe it's Horrifying History, I believe.
Nice.
That might have been last week, but I think it might be this week. So, yeah, let's check it out.
If you like weird, spooky, and strange history, then I have the podcast for you. My name is Brenda, and I'm the host of Horrifying History. Are you into the dark side of history? Horrifying History tells you about the side of history that people don't normally talk about. We tell the tales of haunted places, infamous true crimes, the paranormal, and unsolved mysteries, and then we look to history to see where the truth actually lies. Want to get spooky with us? Get your Horrifying History fix by subscribing today on Spotify, Spreaker, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Ooh, new Octoberpod promos. Let's hear what we've got. Octoberpod AM. Retro horror for bold individualists. Listen bi-weekly wherever you get podcasts. Subscribe to OctoberPod Home Video for true, true-ish, and classic tales of horror and the paranormal. New videos each month, only on YouTube. For retro horror of impeccable taste, listen to OctoberPod AM, wherever you get podcasts. You're listening to the smooth sounds of retro horror on OctoberPod AM with your host Edward October, the best horror narrator, wherever you get podcasts. Stay spooky, mes amis. Wow, that was weird. Tape must have gotten possessed. I hate when that happens. OctoberPodVHS.com.
That was awesome.
I agree.
So I'll take it from here. Leading up to the murder, firstly, Krasinskis, Rieger, their maid since November of 1920, left their employ in September of 1921, primarily because she swore the place was haunted. She would hear footsteps and voices in the attic and empty rooms, but would never find anything when she searched. This was so worrisome for her, she talked to multiple friends before simply surrendering her position. Later, Andreas discovered a newspaper from Munich on the farm that he knew he had not purchased. Asking around to others on the farm, none of them had made the purchase either. Andreas initially put it down to the postman making a mistake and delivering the newspaper to the wrong farm. However, after the murder, no neighbor on the same route subscribed to the newspaper.
And I didn't make that clear. What I mean by that is they could not find when they were investigating the murders afterwards, they couldn't find anyone on the route who subscribed to that paper.
Got you. One day, while working on the farm, Andreas found tracks coming from the woods onto the farm, but found no tracks leading away from the farm. The tracks led to farm's machine room where the lock on the door had been broken, but Andreas found no one in the machine room either. The family reported hearing strange sounds and voices coming from the attic, but when Andreas would check, he found nothing. A house key vanished and never turned up. However, the few people the Grubers told about these events would offer to help, only to have their help refused, and the Grubers never went to the police. The night before the murders, there seems to have been a blazing row between Andreas and Victoria, causing her to flee into the forest, where she was only found several hours later. Where else she might have gone and what else she might have done, we simply have no idea.
So let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors, and then we will get into the day of the murders.
Hey, honey.
Yes, dear.
I feel sponsored.
Awesome. On March 31st, 1922, around midday, Maria Baumgartner, the new maid, arrived accompanied by her sister. The sister stayed briefly while Maria settled in, and then the sister left to return home. Many believe that Maria's sister was the last to see the family together and alive. At some point that evening, Andreas, his wife Cecilia, or Cecilia, I'm not sure which, their daughter Victoria, and her daughter, little Cecilia, were all called into the barn one by one, which they entered through the stables. One by one, they were murdered, most likely with a mattock, which is also called a grub axe, a weapon that resembles a pickaxe. At some point, the killer went into the house where he, she, or they killed little Joseph in his bassinet and made Maria Baumgartner in her room. The next day, a pair of coffee sellers showed up to take an order, but were not answered when they knocked on the door or window and saw no one when they walked around the yard. They left shortly thereafter. On April 4th, local mechanic Al Hoffner showed up, expecting to meet Andreas at the farm, and according to some sources, hopefully get paid. Waited about an hour before starting to repair an engine, which is why Al Hoffner was on the farm, which took him around 4 hours. In that time, he had seen no one and heard nothing except the animals. He left afterwards, leaving his bill, I want to say, pinned to the door. He really wanted to get paid.
I bet. Especially after 4 hours of work, I'd want to get paid too.
By this point, the family had failed to appear at church on Sunday, which was rare for them. Also, little Cecilia had not gone to school for several days, and there was no excuse provided. Around 3:30 p.m. on the 4th, Lorenz Schlittenbauer sent 2 of his children to the home to check on the family. They knocked and made much noise, but got no response. Lorenz went to check on the situation himself, bringing a couple of friends with him, just in case. Lorenz was reputed by some to be Victoria's love interest, and others claimed he was little Joseph's father.
Well, that would make sense why he would be interested in their well-being.
He was their neighbor as well. The men walked into the barn where they discovered the bodies of Andreas, Cecilia, Victoria, and little Cecilia. Only little Cecilia had survived the initial attack, found with clumps of hair pulled from her own head in her hands, a response to trauma and stress.
Oh.
So, and she was dead by the point they found her, but she was the only one who had survived the initial attack.
Poor baby.
Lorenz then left the barn, produced a key, and entered the house. He did not stay in the house long, and when he returned, he did not say what he had done. He also found the bodies of Joseph and Maria. Eventually, the men reported the crime to the police.
Goodness gracious. Should we take a moment for another word from our sponsors?
Yep. Be a good thing to do.
I feel sad but sponsored.
I feel sad but sponsored as well. How about you, Harper?
I feel sponsored, mostly sponsored, and then I'm feeling kind of sad. Yep.
So, next we're going to talk about the investigation. Inspector George Reengruben headed up the investigation, but he was dealing with so many problems. Once the news of the murders got out, the crime scene was trampled by people wanting to look to see more. Furthermore, whoever had murdered the family had clearly remained on the property for some time after the murder, cooking food in the Gruber's kitchen, feeding the animals on the farm, and sleeping in Andrea's bed. This disturbed the police, and many consider it one of the most disturbing facts about the crime. As reported earlier, Lorenz had made his own trip into the home, and no one knows for sure what he touched. Initially, the police felt the motive was robbery. However, the farmstead was in Victoria's name, and she had taken a loan against the property, and the money, a large sum, was found in her room. Still, they investigated salesmen, vagrants, migrant workers, and locals suspected of burglary. Further, no fingerprints were taken, nor was much other physical evidence actually collected. So they also began to compile a list of suspects, of those who might have other motives. Between 1922 and 1955, multiple suspects are arrested and interrogated before the case was discharged as unsolved. Initially, it was believed that the victims killed in the barn were lured there by the sounds of restless animals. But later, tests confirmed that people in the house could not hear someone yelling in the barn. Furthermore, a little over a year later, when the Hinterkaifeck farm was demolished, a penknife and mattock were found in the attic.
Whoa, that
The
rhymed.
police, it did, you're right. The police interviewed Michael Plotko, a local artisan. The man claimed that he had noticed smoke coming from the chimney of the home that smelled terrible. There was a man on the farm, but he had a lantern and immediately thrust it into Plotko's face, preventing him from getting any clear view of the man. Feeling intimidated and uncomfortable, Plotko left.
Like you do.
Like you do. Some days after the murder, a local butcher came to the police to tell them around 3 a.m. on the morning of April 1st, he had passed near Hinterkaifeck and saw two men speaking near the edge of the woods. Upon seeing him, the two men had turned their backs to continue their conversation so he wouldn't see their faces. Once he learned about the murders, he reported the incident to the police, thinking the two strangers might have been involved. In May of 1927, a man walking on his own met a stranger who asked him multiple questions about the murder. Then the stranger announced he was the murderer before running off. Police never found or identified this individual. Still, there are a few suspects.
Suspect 1, Carl Gabriel. Carl was Victoria's husband, believed to kill Arras, France?
Yeah, he was believed killed in Arras, France.
He believed killed in Arras, France during a mortar attack, though his body had never been discovered. According to this theory, Carl did not die in the attack, but rather made his way to the Soviet Union, where he intended to join the Soviets. This is based on the fact that a few who knew Carl swore they saw him after his death. I don't know if that would be like quote unquote, but
Yeah, that would be quote unquote his death, supposedly.
His death, and he told these men that he was going to the Soviet Union. Furthermore, a group of German soldiers released early from Soviet captivity.
From Soviet captivity.
From Soviet captivity.
By a German-speaking...
Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah.
Were released by a German-speaking Soviet officer who claimed to be the Hinterkaifeck killer. According to this theory, Gabriel survives the attack in the Arras, somehow sneaks away and returns by the slowest route possible, apparently, since it took him 8 years, to the farmstead, only to discover his former wife, who has a 2-year-old by another man. Ooh! Angered beyond reason, he kills everyone on the farm and flees to the Soviet Union.
Yeah, that, I guess. That would really stink if that really was what had happened, considering the fact that it could have been her
dad? Yeah.
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 Suspect number 2, Lorenz Schlittenbauer. Schlittenbauer's inclusion as a suspect comes from some inconsistencies. Let's try that again. From some inconsistencies in things he said and did. When he and his friends went to examine the farmstead, they had to break the lock on the gate. But while they were examining the bodies, Schlittenbauer made it a point to touch and move. Lorenz removed a house key and went into the main house. When he returned, his friends asked why he dared go in the home when they did not know whether or not the murderer or murderers were still inside, he said he had to go check on Joseph. Years later, when he was standing on the site where the farm had stood, he told a friend that the murderer had intended to bury the bodies, but the ground had been frozen and impossible to dig into. Schlittenbauer, whose first wife had passed in 1918, was rumored to have had a relationship with Victoria Gabriel, and many thought it was he who was little Joseph's father. Indeed, Lorenz already had a son named Joseph, spelled the same and everything, Josef. The theory goes that either Lorenz discovered Victoria and Andreas' incestuous relationship, realized Joseph was not his son, and killed the family in a fit of rage. Still, towards the end of his life, we know that Lorenz successfully sued several people who espoused the theory that he was the murderer of Hinterkaifeck.
Wow. The third suspect, suspects rather, Adolf and Anton Gump. Adolf Gump was a suspect as early as April 9th, primarily because he was a member of something called the Highland Home Guard, and he had killed other families of farmers on behalf of this parliamentary group. However, there was no evidence tying him to the crime, at least until his sister passed away. His sister, on her deathbed, swore both Adolf and Anton were responsible for the killings. Anton had already passed away by that point, so the police interviewed Adolf. Still, eventually he was dismissed as a suspect because there was no proof tying him to the scene of the crime.
And that's a paramilitary group, not a parliamentary group.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay, just they do completely different things. And I didn't want our listeners confused.
Suspect 4, Andreas Gruber. According to this theory, Andreas Gruber discovers that Lorenz Schlittenbauer is the father of little Joseph, not him. Discovering this, he goes on a rage, killing his wife, Victoria, little Casilia, Joseph, and the maid, and calls Lorenz over, or Lorenz comes over on his own. Andreas confronts Lorenz, who kills Andreas, leaving him in the barn with the other victims.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of spitballing there.
I know, right?
Like really trying to push the puzzle pieces together to fit.
So the fifth suspect is Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway, knowing we would cover this story, sneaks onto the farm, kills everyone.
No.
No. Oh, okay. Okay, suspect 5. Another 2 people, in this case Carl and Andreas S. We don't know their last names because it comes from a third-party story that was reported by someone else. According to a letter written by a woman named Teresa T., her mother received a visitor shortly after the Hinterkaifeck killings. This visitor was the mother of 2 men known as Carl and Andreas S. Teresa never gave their full last name. The woman claimed her sons were responsible for the murders and that her son Andreas was said to have lost his penknife during the attacks. A penknife had been found on the farm. However, it had been shown to Crescens Rieger, the maid who had quit prior to the murder, who identified the penknife as one she had seen around the property before she left.
Okay, seems a little strange, but we'll roll with it. Suspect number 6 was Peter Weber. Peter Weber was a suspect that was brought to the police by Joseph Betts Weber, and Betts were roommates during 1919 to 1920, and Weber had learned of the incest charges between Andreas and Victoria and suggested that the pair go to the farm and steal money from Hinterkaifeck. Betts had wanted no part of this, and Weber never brought it up again. I think that's kind of strange if they went to steal money and they found all of that money in the house, though. That seems to kind of say, no, that's not what happened.
Suspect 7. Anton Karl Bickler?
That's what it looks like.
Three men. Anton Bickler, Carl Bickler, and George Siegel.
Gotcha. Grensons? Rieger,
yeah.
Told the police that these men were the ones she suspected of the murders. Anton Bickler, or whatever, and George Siegel had both recently helped with the potato harvest, and Anton had carved the handle of the mattock, and knew where on the farm it was kept. Both men also knew about the money hidden on the farm. Carl had spoken to the Grensons through her window one night, so she suspected these 3 men of committing the murders. Again, no proof was ever brought to life.
So, let me take the next 2 real quick. One was the Thaler brothers, a pair of ne'er-do-wells who were known to have committed multiple burglaries prior to the Hinterkaifeck slayings, and Cressons Rieger claimed that one of the brother had asked her questions about the family and the layout of the farm. However, again, police could find no evidence that these 2 had ever been a part of the murder. Finally, the 9th suspect is Paul Mueller. Paul was a German national, a migrant worker, arrested for killing a family on a farm in Massachusetts. Brought forth as a suspect by author Bill James. James believed Mueller was responsible for the Hinterkaifeck murders prior to the murder he committed in Massachusetts. Further, James claims Mueller might also be responsible for similar murders, like the Villisca House axe murder that we covered some time ago. So Mueller is a recent choice, and again, I guess that they know he did go to Germany, but they have no proof that he went to Hinterkaifeck. And if he's the same guy that committed the crime at Villisca, it does sort of make sense because that guy used tools that were on the farm to attack people, but then it totally divorces the MO. Like the Villisca murders, everybody except one person was found in their bed.
Right.
For him to stack bodies in the barn doesn't make any sense.
Right. Exactly. Unless it was just his very first murder spree, and
I guess that could be.
I still feel like it's really pushing it to say this one person committed all of those murders in Germany and then ran all over the place. And
yeah, and so that brings us to our summary. First thing I want to say is I do not like Andries Gruber at all.
No, of course not.
The father of this family is a creep of the highest order. I am not happy with him. But around this time in Germany, and we will see this again because I know this because I just did the research for Peter Curtin, the serial killer that we're closing out spooky season with. But yeah, in Germany around this time, incest was ridiculously common. And I feel like a lot of German men should be slapped in the head with something heavy. And while you say, well, Brit, I don't know, just leave your kids alone.
Right? Exactly.
You're supposed to protect them. Freaking traumatized.
Exactly.
So, do I have... Okay, my thing on all of those suspects, I don't think any one of them is the killer. And I'll tell you why. Because whoever it was, I think, was living on the farm.
Yep.
They were hiding in the attic, hiding in the barn,
Yep.
hiding away from the family, and eventually something happened to where they just either snapped or they made the move they'd been planning to make or something.
Yep.
I don't think it's any of the men they found, because these people, like I said, were... I mean, the one maid quit because she thought the place was haunted. She kept hearing voices. And that was going on months before they hired the new maid.
Yes, and I think that's really what happened. Whoever was there and hiding out there on the farm finally either got tired of hiding or decided to take out the family and move on.
Yeah, I don't think any of the suspects we know of are the ones who did it. They may not have been great people in their own rights for whatever reason, but...
I'm sure none of them were. But I definitely don't think that any of them were, like, the killer.
Right.
Yeah. I also have a hard time believing that Victoria's husband was still alive.
Yeah.
Mortars...
That seems ridiculous.
Mortars cause a lot of damage, and if he disappeared in a mortar attack, the chances that he were killed and his body just either rendered into just a bunch of pieces or firmly buried under whatever the mortar hit on top of him, that's why they couldn't find him.
Right.
Right.
So, my final thought is we don't have the person who did this or her sons who did this in... They have not appeared. They have not been found out or sussed out in any way. We don't know who that suspect is.
Right.
That's my theory. I will say I don't like Andreas Gruber very much. I'm not sure I like Lorenz Schlittenbauer much better. But at least I can kind of explain him, because the thing that people really look at and go, well, that's odd, is that he had a key to the house, a key to the front door, which and a key had gone missing, and that he knew that, the ground was frozen, so the killer couldn't bury the bodies. But by my way of thinking, you can explain that. One, he was a neighbor, so it's very possible they gave him a key for, safekeeping. Hey, something happened. Like you do.
Well, he was having a relationship with Victoria. She may have given him that key, and that may have been where it disappeared to. If her father was that controlling and that abusive and that angry, you just wouldn't tell him, hey, I gave our key to this guy because I'm having an affair.
Yeah. So I just... Yeah, and then the other thing is about knowing the ground was cold. He's lived there for all his life. He would remember, hey, we found this, and that was when the ground was frozen, that he wouldn't have been able to put the bodies in the ground.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't see those as necessarily confession-level admissions.
I agree.
So...
What about you, Arthur? You got any final thoughts about
I mean, that's pretty much it.
the Grubers?
Yeah. Like, we don't freaking know. That's not something like we
I
can
think
just
it was a stranger who was just creepily living on the property and got sick of hiding.
Yeah, it's... Yeah. I don't have anything beyond that. I don't think we know who the person that did this is.
Gonna be one of those forever unsolved crimes.
Right, and the police haven't... They did their final interview in 1980. This happened in 1922. It is over 100 years later at this point.
Yep.
Whoever did it is
Has
just
gotten away with it.
is just as dead as everyone else.
Yep.
So I don't see us getting
Whoever did it got away with it. Unfortunately, nothing can be done about it. But man,
and
what a sad way to end so many lives, and especially what really gets me is the babies. These two kids, they did absolutely nothing that they should have been murdered like that. That's the heartbreaking thing in all of it. So That's the part that really gets me, is especially little Joseph, a little 2-year-old, did never hurt anybody, that he should have been killed like that, but...
Yeah, and found in his bassinet. Just
pretty awful.
That's brutal.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think we know who did this. I don't think that person is. I think they're long dead. The Hinterkaifeck, the farm, was smashed flat a year later.
Yeah. That seems shady to me, too. Like, why?
Why are you smashing it?
Why demo a whole farmstead? I mean, it's pretty awful all those murders happened there, but why destroy a home and a farm? And, that seems a little wonky, too. Especially after a year.
Maybe they were hoping they would find something in the wreckage, and they did. They found the penknife and the mattock, but...
Still, strange.
Didn't really do much for them, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they already suspected the mattock was the weapon, but they don't even know if that particular mattock was the one used.
Right.
They certainly didn't test it for blood or anything else. So, yeah, it's crazy. And then the other thing is like, maybe if they had I don't know, closed the crime scene and used and fingerprint, because fingerprinting existed in 1922.
Absolutely.
They didn't use it.
Yeah, see,
I mean, it was
it's almost like it was some kind of cover-up or something. It's almost like there was something going on there, a little wonky.
Yeah, and I could see like someone deciding, well, this guy is sexually assaulting his children and deciding to kill the whole family over it, but incest was ridiculously common at this time. Because
ridiculous is definitely the alternative word there for sure.
Yeah.
Optional word.
So yeah, I don't have anything else. Do you?
Nope. That brings us to the end of our show.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Thanks for keeping us in the Good Pods Top 100. Thanks for being part of our Facebook group, modded by our own Laura June.
Facebook group. Come join the Facebook group. We have a good time in our chat there. It's good time for all.
And we usually have cookies.
Sometimes there's cookies, absolutely.
I will make you guys special cookies if you join. Like right this second.
Thanks to Blue Bows, our sound engineer, who has done the magic thump that leads us back into the show from the commercials. Thanks to Bill Barrett. Last name is spelled Behrendt. Bill is the man who does our theme music. Thank you, Bill. Bill is a musician. He is also one half of the Rusty and Dusty podcast. So if you need a musician for a project or to work an event, you can reach Bill at billbarron@sbcglobal.net. Thanks also goes out to Paige Elmore, formerly of the Reverie Crime podcast, as well as a Canva addict who has combined that love of design with her own Arthur's artwork to make some very special logo art for us. Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
Thanks to Aaron Gnerk of the Big Dumb Fun Show, who continues to promote us locally. Join us next week as we head back to the States, specifically to Illinois, and look into the McPike Mansion as another part of spooky season. And this will be a little bit more like Weston, Missouri than Hinterkaifeck. So.
Amen.
Is that similar? When are we doing my suggestion? Because I know you said it was in October, but
It's actually second week November. Sorry.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.